Let me put it like this. If you believe you're oppressed, then you're oppressed. Life and death is in the power of your tongue. You reap what you sow. We're made in his image. And so when God said, let there be, and it was, our realities are based off of our tongues.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Believers in Business podcast. I am your host, Brian Adamson, and I have with me today the one and only Chris Fisher, who is a kingdom-driven business strategist, real estate mogul, author, leader, visionary, all the things. And he has agreed to sit down with me today, which I'm so appreciative of, to share with you guys kind of what his path and his journey has been to getting to a point where now he's working on multiple 9-figure real estate deals. And as he affectionately explained to me backstage, that's now the floor, not the ceiling. So, Chris, welcome to the show, bro.
Man, I appreciate it, Brian. Appreciate it. Look forward to the discussion, man. Definitely want to say that I value all the things that you've been doing and the community that you've been putting together. So definitely keep moving forward, brother, for sure.
Appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that. So, I mean, look, we live in a society today where everybody wants at least to feel like they're a part of a big idea, even if they haven't achieved their big idea yet. And so I think it's just only appropriate that we start with something you don't hear every day, and certainly that you don't get to be this close in proximity with every day, is a multiple 9-figure real estate investor. And so while people may be interested about the money aspect of it, I'm more interested in who you have to become to do that. Because I think a lot of the time we throw out these numbers. I'm an 8-figure earner, I'm a 7-figure earner, I'm a 9-figure earner. And we mislead people into thinking that just because they want to do those things, they can go and do them. And it's just not true. It's that they have to become a person in order to do that. And so can you chime in on that a little bit in terms of who you have to become to do business at scale?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you opened up with that question, because becoming who you are and being able to answer the very question of who am I is the most pivotal thing that you can ever do in life. A lot of times we assign numbers to represent our core value. We get trained from an early age where we're going through school, and if I get a certain number or a letter grade, that's who I am as a value. Or now if I look at how much money is sitting inside of my bank account, that number tells me who my value is. Or if I'm working at some certain size deal, those things, we're so numerically driven that we allow those things to tell us what our value is. When in all trueness, especially as a believer, if you're in your word, you understand that your value is not driven by a word, your value is driven by your purpose. And so it's very important that you get down to the core of who you are and why I'm here to do what I'm supposed to do before you can even show up to the purpose that God has designed for you. Otherwise, when you show up to it, it already is going to be big as it is when he assigns it to you, but it will scare you to a point where you don't try to move forward in that purpose that you have. And so it's very, very important in your path. And I talk about this. I have a book that I'm going to be releasing in October where I utilize, and it's called The CEO's Tabernacle, and I utilize Moses' journey up Mount Sinai to hear from God in order to get to the instructions. Not only did he get the 10 commandments, but he also got the instructions on how to build a temple, which there's some business principles on how you can go about building something new from scratch that you're only getting divinely from God. And so in order to do that, Moses had to first go on a 40-day fast. And second, he had to climb a mountain just to hear from God. And so that's just to get to his purpose. So to even get to who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, that's the important portion of it all, is making sure that you're putting yourself in a space of, do I hear directly from him? So I know exactly how I'm going to move and be exactly where I'm going to be. Otherwise, the assignment that you have for you, you're going to scare yourself out of even doing it and becoming who you're designed to be in order to fulfill what you need to do.
That's good, bro. What I heard from that, I heard many things from that I want to poke at, but one overarching message that I believe I got from that was, it's not the destination, it's the culmination of who you become in the journey when you arrive at that destination. So correct. Meaning, if I'm somebody who currently is in my 9 to 5, I don't invest in evolution, right? So new education, new ideas, new concepts, new strategies, new training. And then I say, just because I want to quit my job, and just because I've seen Chris out doing development deals, that if I go from who I am currently in this context of my 9 to 5, and then think that I can jump into what Chris is doing, I'll get to the destination that Chris is currently at to only find out that I'm not prepared to be at that destination.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's important that, one, to your point, seek out my purpose, right? Really
Mhm.
start asking God, based on these gifts you've given me and this appetite, the things that make me tick, the things that agitate me, what am I supposed to be doing? Because our best chance of being successful in life is to do the thing that He destined us to do, right?
Mhm.
And then once I get that, then I got to go get the tools and resources to help me become the individual that can do that thing. So
Right.
it's not just going to do that thing, it's about going to become the person that can do that
Right.
thing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You end up getting equipped in your journey so that you can live out the purpose that you have. And that's the important part, is understanding that sometimes in phases where I'm at, that's just my equipping phase. And it's hard because of the fact that you have already have God may have already spoken and given you a vision in your head, and you're like, okay, I just want to get there, and not realize that some of these, each of these different phases are God's way of equipping you so that you can be ready for the assignment that He has for you. So I love the way you put that.
That's good, bro. That's good. So it's not every day that people talk about 9-figure deals. And I know some of these things are in the throes, so we won't get into the micro details of it. But talk to me about what's some of the moving parts that go into putting together a 9-figure deal.
Well, so first, one of the most important things is just understanding how to put a capital stack together in general. One of the things that I think that many entrepreneurs fail to realize is that it's just because you have a great product or business idea, not knowing how to move through the rules of the game, especially institutionally, that's what can hurt you. Right.
Uh,
Some of the best businesses move because they know how to move institutionally. And when you start learning the rules of the game, that's where you get into a position to where you can be your most effective self. It's much like, I don't know if others can relate, but with my kids, if I'm playing with my son and we're playing a game, sometimes kids, they just make up a game and just go do what they want to do. And then, you're sitting there playing a game and all of a sudden he's like, I win. And I'm like, wait, hold on. How did you win? Right.
yeah.
And so, and I have to say, okay, well, tell me how are the rules of the game being played? How are you supposed to do this? And kids are great at just coming up in their imaginations of just creating any kind of game out of nothing. But then when I start figuring out the rules, then I'm okay. Daddy's catching up with you on how to play this particular game, right? And the same thing happens and applies over into business, where it's so important that you learn the rules of the game, because when you'll hit a certain ceiling depending on the level of capital that you deal with. And so it's important to understand the rules. You hear people all the time say, well, I don't like the politics of it all. Well, honestly, you have to understand how the politics work. Otherwise, you're not going to understand how this whole game moves at a greater level. And
Uh,
so if you have this disdain about the politics of it, or the policy making of it, and how those things particularly work, then it can work against you. So that's one of the most important critical things, is just understanding the rules of the game to get there. And then two, when you arrive into the room, when you're about to start talking about these particular deals, you need to know that you deserve to be a part of that conversation, right?
uh,
If
uh,
you don't know that you deserve to talk at that level with those conversations, you're going to get sniffed out real quick. And it's going to be one of those scenarios where we don't know if you can actually execute, because the first question is usually about, well, can you perform, right? Can you do it is what you say that you can do, or can this actually work? And it really doesn't matter on any kind of level or scale, but when you walk in and you arrive, when you know who you are, you know what you got, and you understand the rules of what's happening around there, you have to arrive knowing that you can do exactly what you're supposed to do. And then thirdly, you got to learn the language. My aunt, she used to call it the king's language. She's been in finance for 30 plus years, maybe longer. I don't want to give away her age. She's been in finance for a long time, and she would always tell me, is Chris, you gotta learn the king's language. And part of what she's talking about is when you understand the language of finance, because that's part of the struggle, is just understanding what they're talking about. Then when you understand the language, then you can flow. It's a whole nother language, if you will, especially on depending on how deep you want to go with it, because finance is actually extremely deep. I mean, extremely wide, all at the same time. Those three things are highly, highly important when you're going in to structure a deal at that size.
Really good, bro. Really good. One of the things that I'm a firm believer in is that people don't see you how they see you. They see you how you see you.
Yeah, exactly.
So to your point, if I'm coming in here and I'm timid, because here's the other part, right? And I've been a part of not nine-figure deals, but some substantial real estate over my years, right?
Right.
And one of the things that I realized is that when you start dealing with eight-figure, nine-figure deals, we oftentimes can focus on the part that we don't have and make that the most important part.
Hmm.
Not understanding that these hedge funds and family offices, they have to deploy capital.
Have to.
They need you just as much as you need them, if not more,
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
you're the person bringing if without the deal, they don't have nowhere to deploy the capital,
Have nowhere to go.
nowhere to go. So we can't undervalue ourselves, which goes back to how we open, I believe, and why it's so important that we become the person. So
Yeah.
that, period to the fact that maybe we haven't done this and we haven't done it a lot of times, we know we've done enough development that we at least can go in here and we know our stuff front and back outside of maybe executing on it because we just haven't had the opportunity yet. Can you take me through, because we all get to like that next or that new thing that we haven't done yet, right? And I know it's people out there thinking right now, like, okay, even if my first deal isn't nine figures, but it's six figures, multiple six figures, seven figures. How do you overcome the imposter syndrome of, I know I've done all my due diligence, but I'm just not quite sure on the outcome because I haven't done the thing yet? How do you push through that barrier?
I'll hit you with understanding this. My Bible says in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. He also tells me in Genesis that I was made in his image and that I was deployed with dominion and power over everything on this earth. So understanding those two things, those two core things, because I face this for sure, is okay, am I ready to do a deal at this size? Am I good enough to do this or not? And I realized that that was a fear trying to stop me from being able to move to the next level of where I wanted to go. And so understanding that he's not in it when fear arrives. Matter of fact, in Joshua, he tells Joshua to be strong and courageous multiple times, just starting out in the first chapter. And I remember a couple of years back, my pastor, Brian Carter at Concord Church in Dallas, he went through a series of Joshua. And I mean, right there, before he even started that series, I felt in my spirit telling me that, okay, I just need to be strong, because I was actually going through a very tough time at that period. And so we started studying Joshua, be strong and courageous, came up multiple times, kept telling me, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. And that was my theme for the year. And so just understanding that who I am and what I was designed and equipped with, if that other person bleeds over there, I got to know that I bleed too, and I can actually do exactly what they are doing over there. And if I understand at a higher level, and for many of us, when we're doubting ourselves, we actually probably run past some of these folks that are at some of these levels, but they just have the confidence to be able to execute it. And so you have to be able to know that fear does not reside, and that's not a kingdom principle. So you have to make sure that you're moving that to the side. Now, danger is real, but you also have to be able to have wisdom and discernment to understand what it is that you can actually execute. Because again, it goes back down to the number. Am I assigning what I can do at a particular number? Does the process change because I change to a different number? And the answer becomes no. Do I change because something else, a number comes into the play? No, it doesn't change, right? I got to stay straight to the core of who I am and continue to move forward and don't allow fear to overcome me, because it's fear and pride and greed. Those things can stop you from getting to where you need to be, right? So that's how you get and you walk and you arrive in a room knowing that, okay, I can do this. My Bible tells me I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So if I'm going to put my faith into this Bible, then I need to make sure that I'm actually exercising it when I have the opportunity to exercise it when I'm walking into these rooms, because that's the key. And it all. If you don't have it in you and you don't know it in you, you will get hit, period. But what you're getting hit with is fear that's stopping you from being able to do it. And the number does not measure your value and what you can do. Just
That's
because I'm working at a deal at a certain size does not make me better or above any other person. I have to be cognizant and aware to know that I still can learn from anybody at any place, at anywhere, at any time. That's the
right.
mindset you have to continue to walk with at all times as you move and going through that particular journey.
Yeah, that's 100% true, Chris. 100% true. And I've seen that every time the cap stack got a little more complex and bigger, right? And I remember 5 years ago, I was looking at buying some property in Michigan, and I got tied in with these Jewish investors. And before I knew it, on Sundays, I'm having a call with their hedge fund manager who was managing billions of dollars for them in Tel Aviv that they were deploying stateside. I'm like,
Mhm.
meeting mayors, all these stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'm like,
Yeah,
right, it will blow your mind. And
it will
what you
blow your
find is
mind.
that every time that you be strong and courageous, he creates a new normal in your life.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest disadvantages for most people is they've gotten too comfortable with the normal that they know,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they need to step out into the new normal that God wants them to know.
Exactly. You can't receive what he's ready to give to you if you limit yourself. You know, how many times did you walk out of those particular meetings first going into it like, okay, I hope they think they're gonna try and find me out and think I'm gonna be this or that, and then all of a sudden you walk out of it, you're feeling empowered because you're like, you know what,
Exactly.
I actually moved like I was supposed to move in that particular room, and they feel confident with me, right? I'm sure
Absolutely.
that you faced that a few times going through those meetings, right?
Chris, every time.
Yep, yep,
Every time.
yep.
And that's such an interesting dichotomy, because if we could take the emotion and the perceived emotion of fear just out of it in those moments and just think about it objectively, why are you here?
Yeah,
If they thought what you thought, you wouldn't be here. You know what I
exactly.
mean? If we could just zoom out and think about that logically, it's like you got yourself all worked up, but you wouldn't be a part of this meeting if you weren't supposed to be a part of this meeting.
Exactly.
One other thing I just want to clarify for the audience, because some people are real estate, some not. Can you just explain in broad strokes what a cap stack is? Because you mentioned that's one of the key pieces to doing deals at this level.
Yeah. So a capital stack is really how you are stacking your capital together to fund a deal. So it starts off, you have your senior debt on the deal that's usually coming from your bank, or it might be a private lender that's coming in and giving your senior debt on the deal. Then some deals require what they call mezzanine debt, which is sometimes your in between debt that you may get from a lender that only wants to be there for a short period to get over a certain time. Then you have your different equity players that are in there. You might have your preferred shares. So that's when you're raising capital, you might go after somebody and say, hey, I'll give you preferred shares, which means that they're going to get paid. And really in the capital stack, when your money is falling through, that's who's getting paid first through that entire a capital stack. That's really what it looks like. So if you're looking at an income statement, your debt on the deal is going to get paid first, and then on to down to your preferred equity. So when you have money left over, and that's where your preferred equity, then your general equity or your limited partners on how they may come, or your general partners, that's where they may get some money at the end. And usually the entrepreneur who is the founder, they generally are getting paid at the general equity space. And so they make sure that everybody else gets paid first with inside of the deal. And so that's if things go right. And even if things go wrong, the capital stack is the senior debt, they're getting taken care of first, and so on and so forth. Your capital stack, just understanding that, you can Google capital stack and the image should pop up and it'll break it down very simply for you. But just knowing that those particular things is what you're going to need in order to go and raise capital, raise funds for whatever the project is. It don't matter the industry or what it is. You're going to need your capital stack in order to raise funds for your particular deals.
100%. So what Chris just so eloquently explained, you guys, I want you to understand, to his point, even if you're not doing $100 million deals, which are 9-figure deals, right? If you're not doing 8-figure deals, let's just say you're trying to do affordable housing, okay? And some of you may want to go after grant money. Your capital stack could look like the bank is financing 60%, you're getting grant money that'll cover another 20%, and then you go get private money from friends and family for the other 20%. And affectionately, at that point, you've done the deal with 100% deploying other people's capital, right? So Just
Mhm.
even listening to this, I know sometimes the idea of a big deal seems scary because you're like, well, how am I ever going to do that? When am I ever going to get $100 million? Well, truth is, most deals, right, from sophisticated investors, they're not using their own money. So what does that mean for you guys? You need to learn the skill, not worry about
Mhm.
the saving of money. You need to learn the skill
It's the
that allows
skill.
you to go use other people's money. So, Chris, you're a man of many talents, author with multiple books. You want to tell us a little bit about not only the books, but what caused the appetite to become an author, right? You're already out doing big deals, you're making money, you're doing your thing. What has been on your heart to want you to go out and write these books?
Well, I'll talk about my very, very first book that I wrote over 10 years ago. And I'll even say this, the class English going through school, that was not my best subject. So I had no
Uh,
idea or even thought that I would have the ability to even write a book. It was like, who, me? And even still, I definitely love having an editor because I always needed, because that's not my strongest skill set. But the core reason why I'm putting out different content through books is because I'm seeing a need based upon my lens and experience and having to push something out there that's going to help. And so the first book I wrote was called Warning Professional Sports Don't Make Millionaires. And during that
uh,
time frame, doing marketing brand development for some professional athletes, specifically in basketball. I worked for a company doing that. When I was starting to get engaged with the athletes, I really started to see how they didn't have the mindset of a millionaire. You can be given $1 million, but not have the mindset of a millionaire. So the biggest idea that I usually give in regards to that is I can put you inside of an operating room, give you scrubs, give you a body to work on, and even give you the utensils to work onto that body. Does that make you a surgeon? And the
uh,
easy answer to that is no. And what separates is the training and the knowledge and information that you know in order to go in and do that. And the same thing applies when it comes to most millionaires. It's a know-how in order to get there. And so when you're giving a Ferrari to a person that doesn't even have a license to drive, now you're asking for different issues to come about. So that was my first book that came about. And then my second book is called Power Profit Politics. I've had experiences both working for a Fortune 500 company, worked in government, been in the entrepreneur space, and then starting to work on and be a part of larger deals, not the ones that I was putting together myself, but being a part of those deals, I got exposed to a certain level of understanding that the larger the deal became, I had to understand how all three of those factors work together because most times people don't, they just think about the business aspect. So that might be the profit. And then they start hitting and understanding that, okay, how did I scale to the next level to get to where I want to be? What's the politics that I gotta deal with? Really at that scale, that's how businesses fought out. It's through the politics. That's the war zone. And then understanding your power with it. If you don't understand those different dynamics, it becomes an issue. And then the last thing was just more so a thing for my kids. You know, I'm a father of three. And so I did a coloring book that also had definitions after each page that tells kids exactly, you know, different definitions of finance so they can color and understand and learn what's the definition of power, what's the definition of a stock, what's the definition of equity, you know. So now they're coloring a picture and it has a word and definition, and so they can learn these things at a young age. Because what I realize is that we don't need to wait until we're 26 to learn the King's language. We need to start at 6, you
hey
know,
man,
or even earlier. So, because the first thing is just knowing how to do these things. So the biggest thing when it comes to these books is really about my experiences and being led to push out, you know, something that I feel is needed out there in the space. So that's really it. I didn't even after I wrote the first book, I didn't even think I was going to write another book. You know, I started seeing I don't see anybody talking about business in this way where they're putting all three of these aspects together so that I can see the full depth of the game. So, you know, I decided to put a book out there for that. So it's just now my next book is like I mentioned earlier, the CEO's Tabernacle. And so now I'm taking, you know, from a faith driven perspective, how do I take and really whether you are in faith or not, you can take the principles of Moses going up a mountain to hear from God to execute a completely new plan that he never had to execute before. To build something from scratch, from new, that is many entrepreneurs have to go through that and be able to do that, to take something from your mind and make it become real. It's a wonderful and painful experience all at the same time for those that understand of just getting something out of your head and like, okay, there it is. So that it's really been just being led by the spirit and knowing that, okay, I need to go ahead and put this out, and do that. That's where it comes from.
Okay. So, oh man, it's so much gold coming out of your mouth, man. I got so much that I want to poke at with everything you shared. So I'm gonna work backwards
Yeah.
as best as I can. So the first thing is, right, a good man leaves his inheritance for his children, right? Generational wealth, one of the biggest buzzwords in society. You took that literal and serious enough to not start where most people start, though. Most people start by thinking it's to pass down the stuff, when in essence, real generational wealth is to pass down a skill, because if I don't pass down the skill, then they can't manage the stuff.
That's it.
So
That's it.
I just didn't want to speed right by that because people heard the idea and the concept, and it's much deeper seated and rooted than what
Yeah.
meets the eye. So I wanted to just kudos to you, bro, for taking the ownership in that by starting first with your first ministry, which is your family, and then creating something that could be deployed out to all other families so that they can start from an early age, understanding this king's language, as you called it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other piece that I found very intriguing with the power, politics, and profits
Yes.
is we like to disassociate politics from what we do today, particularly
Yes.
because there's a lot of identity politics going on, and
Mhm.
I would never even start to act like I'm in political science or understand how things work from a political level, but I do understand it enough to understand how I need to involve myself with politics as a happy medium to get said things accomplished, right? What
Right.
would you say to the entrepreneur? And I just want your realist opinion on this. What would you
Mhm.
say to the entrepreneur out there right now that's so wrapped up in culture and identity politics that is disallowing them to see inherently what's happening to them depending on who they vote for and vote on based on their feelings as opposed to the objectivity of what's really going on?
My honest opinion on that is if you allow your feelings to get too deep into it, it's going to keep you stuck from being able to move forward. Period. And you have to understand and learn that um, uh, what's happening on a political level, you can either allow your feelings to get hurt or you can allow yourself to say, okay, what are they doing and how can I take advantage of it my own self, right? And so, yes, there are different things from a political aspect that are put out there to keep you distracted. And so I have to learn how to decipher from the distraction and what's actually truth. And so part of that is not being as plugged in to the rhetoric, but actually being a person that's willing to seek out truth. And so that's highly, highly important. Depending on what you're looking to do with inside of your business, it really can become a competitive advantage for yourself if you understand what is going on. We can take the big beautiful bill by example. That's been thrown out there. You have so many different opinions from either side of the coin that I've heard in regards to that particular bill. Whether it can hurt you or help you, the biggest thing that you need to do is just figure out what does it actually say. Download the daggone bill. You can find it on the internet from the government and download it for yourself. And then we have beautiful tools like AI that you can break it down, feed it to, and ask questions of it so that you can really learn and know what it says for yourself. And
Wait,
then
but Chris, is AI racist though? If I drop this in AI, I mean, will it also keep me oppressed? If is AI an oppressor as well if I put it in there?
let me put it like this. If you believe you're oppressed, then you're oppressed. Bible already says, as a man thinketh, right? Life and death is in the power of your tongue. And it also says you reap what you sow. We're made in his image. And so when God said, let there be, and it was, our realities are based off of our tongues. And I just believe and I have faith that if we change our rhetoric just enough to where we're stop saying that we are something, because here's the here's the and I'm going on a biblical tangent, but the tangent is that if when Moses asked, "What is your name?" and God said, "I am," well, that's
Uh,
where you stop right there. So if you
uh,
keep saying "I am" and then you're saying oppressed right behind it, guess what? You calling God's name out and talking about oppression, and you're calling out a name that has the ability to create when you call it out. So you have to be very, very careful on the words that you say and seek out the truth for yourself. So if even if you're utilizing AI as a tool, if you think that it's that thing, and here's the thing about AI, I've been utilizing it for a while, and my core belief is that it is nothing. When you're having a discussion with it, it's like a mirror. That's really what it is. The better questions that you ask to it, the better it's going to feed back to you. And so who you are feeding to it, that's what's going to feed back to it. And so if it's in the hands of the wrong person, guess what? It's a mirror. It's in the hands of the wrong person. Just like the Bible was used as a tool to keep people divided and controlled, same thing. It's just same thing with a gun. A gun could be used to be utilized to kill somebody or to feed your family. It depends on who the tool is in their hands of. So just got to think, how do you think and see yourself? How do you speak? If you think you're something, then guess what? That's what you're going to be. For me, in my family, we're not considering ourselves to be oppressed. Period. That's how my household lives. We're not that, so we're going to move forward because I've already know what my God has already called me. But if you want to continue to think, you can say, but Chris, there are systems out there, yes. But also, I'm reaping what I'm sowing. So if I'm going to know what's out there, I'm going to speak truth to what it is. That's the power that I've been given. So therefore, the result that I expect, because I've been given dominion and power on this earth, I got to understand my power and my worth. So that's how I'm going to move with that.
Man, glad I asked that question. No, seriously, bro, we need more conversations like this. I think oftentimes because of social media, because of likes and comments, a lot of the time I think there's a lot of irresponsibility from those of us that have pushed past whatever perceived barriers of oppression. And I'm not negating what happened 400 years ago,
Right.
but I'm also not acting like it is 400 years ago.
Right.
Right. And so oftentimes I think we pacify and we even pander to this ideology for the sake of not having people come after our brands and being relatable to everybody. When it's like, but bro, you done made 7, 8 figures. How could you also subscribe? That's a lie. It can't be true in your.
Right.
So we're doing everybody a disservice by continuing to throw them flotation devices for them to still sit out there treading water in the same ideology instead of throwing down the ladder and saying, look, I can pull you up, but there's going to be some changes along the way to get up here, and it starts up here.
Exactly.
So I just appreciate everything that you shared, bro. And it's a message that needs to be echoed more frequent, because we only hurting ourselves by believing something that's keeping us stuck.
Exactly. Man, you just said something so powerful right there. Oh, you said something so powerful in regards to being stuck, because the more we believe that we are something, we're going to continue to be exactly that. And you can't progress. You can't become the optimal version of yourself believing that you are something that God created. When he created us, he said it is good, right? At that point, his good compared to our good are completely different, right? Sure. So you have to understand that, man, okay, he created me in his image. I'm good. Therefore, I have the ability to do this. That does not mean that there's not any kind of trials out there. That doesn't mean that there isn't any objections, forces that we have to overcome. None of that. It doesn't negate those things. It just empowers what you have inside of you. One of the verses that people, I like to say, misquote all the time, they say God will do exceedingly abundantly above all you would ask or think or imagine or think, but they forget the last part, which is so important. Which is according to the power which is in you, right?
Yes, sir.
You cannot leave that part out. And I get tired of hearing people leaving that part out, and understanding that God has already placed the power in you to be able to go out and do exactly what it is you do. Yes, there are people that are going to want to try and take you down or whatever it may be, but that doesn't mean you don't have the power. And so that's why I talked about at the very beginning. When you walk in and show up into those rooms, you got to understand the power that you already been given. From the very moment that when he talked to Adam and he told Adam about his dominion and power, he was talking to you at the very same time because he was talking about the seed of his loins and going forth from there. So you got to understand that God has already spoken the power and the dominion that you have over your life, and you have to move in that particular space as you're doing it in business. Otherwise, when we're going to allow the enemy to be able to do what they want to do because they know the power, they know God's power. But do you know the power, right? That's already inside you, right? That's why there's so many different things that are coming at you trying to keep you suppressed because they know the power that is inside of you. So you have to be able to will and unlock in your mind, okay, I got the power. I can go and do this. And until we realize that what's happening right now is an opportunity for a wealth transfer, it's waiting. God did a wealth transfer. When the children of Israel were coming out of Egypt to go out into the wilderness, where did they get the tools to be able to build this tabernacle? They had a wealth transfer that happened from the Egyptians that came over to them that gave them the exact tools. They didn't just walk around and automatically just had gold. God gave them the gold they needed. God gave them the fine linens that they needed. God gave them the skill set that they needed while they were sitting as slaves in bondage over there in that particular time point. So you got to understand the power that's in you, the resources that are around you, and understand that there are times in our generation where things have the ability to transfer. And in order for it to transfer, you got to be willing to walk out and go receive it. But you got to know the power that you have. That's it in itself.
I'm gonna tell you something right now. You're the only other person that I've heard get so upset behind that verse from, I think it's either Galatians or Philippians.
Yes.
Talks about the immeasurably more that we can ask, think, or imagine, and we forget the most important. You can't actuate the blessing without the according to the power at work. The power at work. Meaning it has to be in motion. It got to be actuated. The power at work within us. One of the things that I do, even when I'm at my most timidity states and, you know, I got apprehension about this and I find myself worrying about that, I remind myself, I say out loud as I'm praying, the power that resurrected Christ from the dead. I make sure I remind myself of the descriptor of this power. It's the same power that resurrected Christ from the dead. You mean to tell me I can't go get this deal done? You mean to tell me I can't go have this conversation? You mean it's the power that resurrected Christ from the dead? That's the power we got residing in us?
That's same power. Same power. Same power. Same power, man. When you start to realize that I got the same Holy Spirit that shows up doing all these work, I got that same power when he left and said I got it in, man, the same power. So guess what? I'm about to go out here and do some things because I got the same power working inside of me. That's it. That's it. That's why it's important to know who you are. That's why it's important.
So imagine as a believer, and especially today in the Black church, we think it's more important to boycott Target, to prove a point.
For goodness.
Instead of activating that power within us to go do whatever we need to do despite Target.
Yeah, we already have the resources. That's the crazy thing. We have the resources. I got fought. The interesting thing is I got fought on social media about it because I made a slight statement. The statement was about, at first we had the one single day, no spending day that was going on. And so I said that I was not going to participate in it because I felt like it was short-sighted, because my whole point behind it was I wasn't going to participate because also I knew who they were pushing to be in the forefront to be the leader of that. And so there was somebody that was outside of our community that was being pushed up to be the forefront leader of that particular initiative. I didn't say anything about the Target initiative or anything of those particular things, but I was talking specifically about that particular thing. I'm very big on it for whatever community it may be. I believe that the leader of that community that's going to take it to its next phase needs to come from within, not from outside, because there's certain innate things that we know about ourselves in order for us to be able to push the things together. We can have fantastic allies, but to lead a movement, you need somebody from within. And so I got fought on that on social media. People were like, oh, you must not want to be a part of the culture, all kinds of different things. My biggest point from a business aspect of it is that a lot of the businesses that we start are on the retail side of the supply chain. And so
For
what
sure.
we don't understand is if we don't increase our value down the value chain of the supply chain, then regardless of who it may be, if we decide to boycott a Target or we boycott a Walmart or whoever it may be, we don't own enough of the supply chain in order to sustain ourselves. That's why we don't have the dollar being able to circulate, because I can go and I am an avid person that supports minority and black owned businesses. I mean the watch I have on now, but I mean like my bags, like, people are like, well, just go support a black business. That's my lifestyle. It's not just a one day I go and do it. It's a lifestyle for me to support people that are like me. And so we got to understand that if I even go and buy some food from a black owned restaurant, who are their suppliers? Well, they don't have
Uh-huh.
many suppliers being able to get their equipment from, their food from, all of that stuff. Like when it goes down the supply chain that they're doing their stuff, it doesn't last long. That's where the issue is. It's the supply chain, not just, okay, I'm gonna stop shopping at Target. We got to look at the totality of the entire situation, which is we need to attack the
100%.
entire system. That's what it is.
100%. And let's be very clear, right? I'm a root cause guy. I observe the symptoms, but I treat the root cause.
Yeah.
If I'm a doctor and you come in my office and your arm is attached to your ear, well, clearly I know that something's off about that and I could quickly dissect and treat that issue. But if I never understand how did your arm get attached to your ear in the first place, there's a good probability that that may happen again.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm always observant of the symptom, but I'm always looking to get to the root. So when you explore this whole thing, and I won't double click on it too much, but it was all derived from the taking away of the DEI initiatives, right? But if
Right.
you look at the data on the DEI, you'll find that we're a very small percentage of that initiative. The predominant recipient and winner was not us.
It wasn't
And
us.
so it's like, but then we just again, man, the black church, we
Yeah.
pander and we galvanize and we mobilize, and it's like, but did we even understand what was really happening,
What was
man?
really happening?
And to your point, we perpetuate this cycle of moving incorrectly because we don't have the right information. And as a
Hmm.
result of we shoot ourselves in the foot. Tabitha came out with like, I appreciate y'all heart, but let me tell y'all something. It took me years to establish the pipeline with them. It took me,
Exactly.
and by the way, if my sales drop below a certain number, they will take that shelf space and give it to somebody that's in line with no problem.
No problem. Yep.
And so, and that's what I mean by we act so much on emotion and ignorance
Mhm.
that the very thing that we think we're helping, we're hurting.
Hurting big time. Hurting big time. Actually, Target had, and from my perspective, out of the retailers, had the largest vendors that were minority, and not just have it as a here's a minority space for here's this one aisle with this, like they had vendors everywhere, and so everybody has their way of
It
believing
wasn't
and
it
wanting to
wasn't
move.
the ethnic it wasn't the ethnic aisle
No,
at the
it
grocery
wasn't just
store.
the ethnic aisle, you know. So, but people have their own ways and views on how they want to go about achieving things. I just like you. It's one of those things where if we're going to address the situation, let's really address it. The problem is that we lack power because we're on the consumer side, not in the creation side. And so, how do we get down the supply chain to be the creators and not just the consumers? Yes, buying power has a certain power to it, but when we are the juice of the world, like literally everything we do is duplicated around the world, and we create industries from our creativeness and have nothing to do with those industries. I mean, that should tell you enough the type of power that we have, but we just need to make sure that we're aligning ourselves to be able to move in the right way. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same cycle over and over again.
Bro, you said something that just prompted a revelation that sat me up in my chair. Every time something happens against us,
Mm-hmm.
our first response is we're going to hurt them by not spending our money.
Mm-hmm.
So we've identified that we have some sort of leverage based on us as the largest demographic of consumers, that if we don't spend our money with you, we hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just kind of flipped the narrative and said, how about we actually take our resources, forget not spending it with them? How about we go and build something and multiply the money we have so that we can be their direct competitor and run them out of business. That would be, to me, how you go to war in the marketplace.
That's how
Not
you
by
do it.
saying, I'm not going to spend my money with you. By the way, somebody was the beneficiary because we spent the money.
You
It
spent the
just wasn't
money.
a target, right? We went, we found somewhere justified in our mind. Oh, we hurting them today. No, you the only one that's hurt at the end of the day. Let's just be
Right.
very clear.
Right.
Right. So, how do we get there, Chris, as we kind of wrapped up this conversation? I know it's one that's talked about a lot. Like, how do we get to a point where we change the mindset and we understand we got to stop instant gratification and we got to take this seed that God is, we got to stop eating our seed and put it in the ground?
Right. Yep. Got to stop that. Got to stop that. Because the Black church is a staple within inside of our community. I believe it starts with new revelation that needs to happen inside of the church to understand real truth and stop accepting what we're just being told. And just we have to, in order to get there, you have to put down all of these titles, all these labels, all of it, and be ready to receive and hear from God and hear the truth about things. And it starts at the church. For instance, we have to understand, when Jesus came on earth, he didn't say, repent or you're about to go to hell. He actually said, repent for the kingdom of God is at hand. And then when he started saying that I'm here to spread the good news, and the good news is that the kingdom has returned. Well, we need to make sure that we are preaching about the kingdom agenda more so than anything else. We are understanding the kingdom agenda, then I will go back to reading in Leviticus and Deuteronomy for myself and understanding that God laid out a whole economy that sits right inside of there and how to do it. And then in Genesis 1, when he's telling us to be fruitful and multiply, he gives us a formula on how to build an entire business system. So it starts there of just releasing some of these ideologies that we had that sounded good, that was good rhetoric, and going from there. We have to release the good sounding rhetoric. I mean, there are gospel songs that are problematic because of the way they present certain things, and we have to make sure that we are on point with the truth, with the word, in order to get where we want to get. And I know we're talking about the question is more so about business, and I'm answering it from a spiritual standpoint. But the reason why I'm answering it from a spiritual standpoint is that we're in a spiritual warfare. And so all of this from a business aspect, when you start doing a deep dive on the truth and understanding certain things and how things are moving, you would understand that this is way more than just a physical thing. We're spiritual beings in a physical world. And Paul told us that it's important for us to live by the Spirit. So for us to live by the Spirit, living by the Spirit allows me to download what God has for me. That's why he says, seek ye first the kingdom and his righteousness. Well, the righteousness is alignment, and seeking the kingdom. If I'm living by the Spirit and seeking the kingdom, I'm able to get the downloads that God has for me so that I can go and push forward these plans. And you got people that live other agendas that understand how to get certain type of downloads, but use it for the wrong reason. So that's why the devil was in the garden. Devil hears from God and speaks to God just like we do, right? But it depends on what agenda is going to happen in this. And so if we want to push forward the right agenda, we got to be able to align ourselves, release everything else, and be able to hear and get a true spiritual download. Well, I know every year, most churches in Black church, it's become a thing now where we're doing a fast, a Daniel fast or something of that nature, right? Well, it'd be amazing if we were doing that more on a regular, if we were doing more fasting on a regular to really hear, because that's a journey. My latest book that I'm releasing, I didn't get that book until I was on a fast. I was on a 40-day water fast. And that's how I got that book and wrote it while I was on that water fast. So there's some different downloads you can get and understand what to do when you are aligning yourself with God and the kingdom, because that is a completely different economy. So hearing in the pulpit or hearing a song talking about the economy is down or something of that nature, the economy is down for who? Not God's kingdom, not for who I'm serving. Right. So if I want to reposition myself and if I can't receive the transfer of that wealth, if I'm not in position to receive it, I can't do it.
And here's the thing, Doc. Tithing teaches you about ownership, not stewardship. You
Yes.
can be a broke tither in the Black
Yes.
church, as many
Yes.
of them are realizing, right? And so we make it seem as if that's the most important element, that if we give God our first fruits, which I highly recommend and practice. However, comma, that's the start of it, not the end of it. You
Yeah,
still have to learn how to manage and multiply to
it's
90. And
about management.
I couldn't agree with you more, bro. We gotta do a reset and first understanding that is God's money.
Yeah, it's a
So how do you get to go and buy Gucci belts and Louis belts and crab boils and trips to Tulum, and like how do you get to go do all of that with first consulting with the person who owns who gave it to you? So
hmm
to your point about the spiritual aspect is paramount, because if you look at it practically, it's why it hasn't got fixed and resolved yet, because the way in which you use your money is very spiritual, very much so
hmm
spiritual. And we got to get back to the foundation of who is the founder of this thing, and consult with him about what we're supposed to be doing with the resources he put in our hands. I think the parable of the talents is a great illustration of
It's
that.
my favorite
God will
one.
bless you according to your ability, not according to your prayer and your wish and your ask and your hope, according to your ability. You want more, become more. If you want
Right.
more, become more. Not ask for more, become more.
Management. That's what that is all about, man. That's one of my favorite ones right there. If you don't know how to
Yeah, bro.
manage, he's not going to give you, you're not going to hear the well done. And the interesting thing is that the person that buried their stuff, he didn't just call them lazy, he called them lazy and wicked.
Wicked.
Like, and there wasn't many times that he used the word wicked, right? And so we got to understand that if we're burying what we have and we're not scaling and growing what we have, then we're not going to hear that well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few, and now I make you rule over many. That's just not, it's not coming, because that's only belongs to those that know how to manage what he gives you. And the other thing that's important to see in that is that God didn't give it out equally. The master didn't give it out equally. So this mindset of thinking that I all need to have the same amount, that's not the principle. The principle is about, do you manage what you've been given? Then you'll be trusted with more.
Amen.
Just quit worrying about it.
That's right.
Well, I need to have. Well, I got three, but this person got five. I need to have that. No, manage what you've been given, and the principle will work out to where you've been given more. That's just the bottom
That's
line of it. Yep.
That's right. And if you would just stop to ask yourself, why is it that God doesn't treat us differently but accordingly? It's because he's a great businessman.
He is exactly
And why would he give you something that would hurt you and hurt him
all at the same time.
all at the same time?
It
And
don't
if you
make
think
sense.
I'm lying, and if you think I'm lying, just ask yourself, every time that you've gotten to this place of excess, how did it go? And
Yep.
where did you end up?
Yeah. Where'd you end up? Where'd you end up? Man, it's about
Chris,
management. Man.
we're gonna have to do a part two to this, man. I so
Yes.
appreciate your time today. Please tell everybody, where can they get the books? Where can they connect with you? All those good things.
Yeah, so the books are on my website, powerprofitpolitics.com. You can be able to go there, or you can find it on Amazon. I don't promote the Amazon part, but as much, because they don't pay the authors as much money unless they sell it yourself through your
Yeah.
own thing. So powerprofitpolitics.com is another spot. And then also you can find me on social media. Fish the Mogul is my Instagram spot. You can catch me on there, and I promise I'll start posting more. Most of my stuff is through the stories and all that kind of stuff. Right now, I'm not in the phase of trying to be seen.
Yeah.
That's not my thing.
Yeah.
But I do put stuff out there here and there, and just to make sure that people know that I'm alive and breathing and out here working. I'm out here executing. So I'm not one of those that needs a whole bunch of followers just to prove that I'm actually doing something. But yeah,
I totally get it. I totally get it. I respect it. I know, especially working with deals at that level, less more most of the time, right? Reducing the social footprint. At the very same time, though, after having this conversation with you, and for those of y'all that's in the comments already, amen, and then high fiving and going crazy, help me right now let Chris know his voice is necessary and we need more
yeah,
of it. And so, however we figure that out to expand the social footprint in ways strategically to still be able to feed God's sheep while at the very same time feeding your family, I pray that we can find that happy medium, because, bro, the well runs deep,
yeah.
and people need to lean from this overflow for sure. So I thank you
Appreciate
for
it,
your time today, contribution. I thank you for who you are, that you do, bro.
man. I appreciate your platform. Thank you for allowing me to be on here. extreme blessing. I appreciate it. You don't have to open it up to anybody. So I definitely appreciate you allowing me to be here. So I love it. And I'd love to come back again at a later date. And especially when a couple of these things start to come out and become public, I
Yes.
can talk more about it. So yes, definitely.
Sure. All right, let's make it happen, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir.